Hello and welcome to Spread Book Joy. Today I'm thrilled to be sharing with you my first original tag, which was created with the lovely Shelly Swearingen. It's the Picture This Book tag. If you're new to the channel, I'm Jack. If you're not new, welcome back to Spread Book Joy, and welcome to anyone who's newly subscribed. It's great to have you here. Thank you for sticking around. We are running the Picture This Readathon, Shelly Swearingen and I, the whole month of April. If you've not heard of it yet, it's a readathon devoted to sharing the love of the picture book with everyone. Picture books for all ages. We're hoping to promote picture books for adults to read and appreciate as well. So far I've seen some fantastic TBR videos of amazing books that I've not heard of, so I've learned a lot about new picture books that I want to seek out and enjoy. And yeah, it's been so much fun recently. If you want to take part, we have an announcement video with all of the prompts and everything you need to take part in it. I'll link that in the description box below. I'll link Shelly's as well. I've also been creating a Picture This playlist of all of the TBR videos and content that people are creating for it, and I will also link that in the description box. The prompts will also be in the description box. But this is our tag video. So we've created an original tag, never done one before, so I'm thrilled to finally have an original tag out there after 18 months on BookTube. Each of the prompts is based on a well-known, well-loved picture book, and they don't have to be picture books for the answers. In fact, we'd encourage you to just do whatever book springs to mind for your answers. Some of the questions aren't even around books, so you can have answers about other things as well. So here we go. Prompt number one is Love You Forever by Robert Munsch, and it is name a book you imagine you will love forever. I could have picked loads for this, so I've gone for two classics. Classics are books that you get something different out of when you return to them, depending on your time of life you're reading it, what's going on in your life, how old you are, you notice different things. So the first one is Anne of Green Gables. I reread this year for the, I don't know how many times in my life I've read this book. I first read it when I was probably about 10, and I loved it. I love the writing of L.M. Montgomery. I love Anne Shirley as a character, and I just want to say right now that I think this is a highly underrated book, which is a strange thing to say because it is very well regarded, but I think it's just very well regarded as a children's book, and I think that is doing this book a massive not disservice, because I don't want to undermine children's books as a category, because as you know, I'm all about the children's books on this channel. I love them, but I think a lot of people don't read Anne of Green Gables because they think of it as a classic children's book. I think this is just an amazingly structured, written book. It's got amazing characters. It's the tale of orphaned Anne Shirley, who finds herself after years and years of being shunted from families to orphanages and being treated quite abominably. She finds herself living with the ageing brother and sister Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert on their homestead on Prince Edward Island in Canada, and it's called Green Gables, and it's rural setting. There is humour, there is hope, there's heartache. It's poetic and beautiful, and the writing just sweeps you away. And I think that if you haven't read Anne of Green Gables in your lifetime and you think of it just as a children's book, then pick up a copy of it, do yourself a favour. It is an extremely special book. The other book I'm going to say that I will always love, and I can't imagine not loving it. In fact, it will probably grow every time I read it. I get something new out of any of the books I've read of Jane Austen, actually, and that is Pride and Prejudice. It's no surprise, I'm a huge Jane Austen fan, and this is my favourite of her books. Possibly, if I have to pick a top 10 books of all time, this is one of them. I'm very loath to say this is my favourite book of all time, but it's pretty close. Prompt number two is based on Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, Very Bad Day by Judith Viorst. Which books or comforting things do you turn to when you're having a bad day? So many. Those two I would have mentioned. Yeah, actually, they're not ones I turn to when I'm having a bad day, though they are nice comfort reads. I get a sense of comfort when I read them, but when I'm having a very bad day, when I don't know what to pick up, there are two authors I turn to quite a lot. One of them is the great Terry Pratchett. I'm a huge Discworld fan, and these books, the world, the characters, everything feels to me like coming home and very comforting, and because they're so funny, and he's just created this amazing world that I can just go into and lose myself in. So Terry Pratchett. The other books that I love to read or when I'm just not sure what to read and I've returned to again and again and again, are Bill Bryson's books. I don't really talk about him much on here, but I am a big fan of Bill Bryson's books, his travel writing mainly. I've read a couple of his other non-fiction works, but I love his travel writing, and I also absolutely love turning to my childhood favourites. So going back to Enid Blyton, Malory Towers. Last year in the lockdown, the third lockdown, I was feeling quite down with all of that going on, so I turned to the famous 5 books, which just so wholesome and just give me a sense of comfort. But sometimes I can't even read the books, so a lot of the time audiobooks are things that comfort me. The ones that I read the most or listen to the most when I really want some comfort are the Harry Potter audiobooks narrated by Stephen Fry. I also love the Bill Bryson audiobooks, but not narrated by Bill Bryson because he's a terrible narrator of his own work. There's a guy called, I think, William Roberts. He narrates them brilliantly. The Discworld books, I don't like Nigel Planer or Tony Robinson narrating the Discworld books, and I'm extremely excited that Audible are redoing the Discworld audio books. I do like a guy called Stephen Briggs who does the Discworld audio. I find him very good. But if I can't even listen to an audiobook, sometimes I don't want to listen to books or read books. If I'm really feeling bad, I'll just watch comforting things. So, but usually adaptations of books. The Harry Potter adaptations, I love the films, they're comforting. Lord of the Rings, I love those. Any 80s movies, particularly things like Back to the Future or Labyrinth or any John Hughes films, anything like that from my childhood that I love. Also Buffy and Angel. Or there's some comforting TV. I like cosy TV, so Gilmore Girls was one that I turned to in the last year in the lockdowns when I wasn't feeling up to watching anything. Gilmore Girls, The Durrells, anything by Disney and Pixar can be really helpful and like comforting as well. So yeah, that's the sort of thing I like to do. Other than that, I like to just curl up in bed or on the couch with a blanket, must have a blanket, and a cup of tea and some chocolate or crisps or ice cream. Ice cream's a great comfort for me. Prompt number 3 is The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle. Which book, series or character sparked your hunger for reading? And that's really easy. It was the Magic Faraway Tree series by Enid Blyton, because it's the earliest series that I can remember just blowing my mind about this world that these children went to on their own. They go up this tree and there'd be all these different worlds and these amazing characters, and there was a series. So, by the way, Jacqueline Wilson, who is an amazing children's author, has written a new Magic Faraway Tree book, and it's coming out this year. I can't wait. And then from those I got into her famous 5 books, Malory Towers, etc, etc. But that was the first series I remember being, I must have been quite young. I think I was 6. I don't remember learning to read, so I could have been, I probably was about 6 years old, and I just adored those. It's given me my love of fantasy. From that, the next book series that I remember also completely having a massive impact on me was the Chronicles of Narnia, because of course that's a series of books where we see an evolution of a fantasy world, because it evolves over the whole series, and that concept really made a massive impression on me. So those ones, they're the ones that sparked my true hunger for reading. Prompt 4, Green Eggs and Ham by Dr Seuss. What is the most unusual book you've ever read? I have to say it's the book I'm reading at the moment. I am currently buddy reading, and everyone will know about this book, but I am buddy reading House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski, or Danielewski, I don't know how you pronounce it, apologies, but I'm buddy reading it with Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. We've only just started, but I did try reading it a number of years ago, and I put it down because it's like a textbook, but it's so cleverly structured and layered. It's a tale of documentary, which people are wondering whether it was actually real or whether it actually existed. The documentary is about a family who move into a house, and when they move into the house they start documenting their move, and as they document their move, unusual things start to happen in the house. Now, we don't start off the story there. We start off the story being introduced to it by someone who found in an old man's apartment a load of papers and objects and things which were all around, all the evidence and all the research he had gathered whilst this man was investigating this videotape to see if it was real. So it's really layered structure, and if you just flick through it just to show you, you can see that it is it's written in the most strange, bizarre way, and you've got lots and lots and lots of, some pages with hardly anything on, some pages where you've got let me see, nothing on it, some pages where the text is turned around. It's structured like that. And yeah, so Alice and I are reading this, really intrigued. It's been all over BookTube recently because it's had a bit of a resurgence in the last year or two, and loads of people have read it. It's been on my TBR. I bought this because I was intrigued by it. I sought out a second-hand copy because it's quite expensive, and I bought it about 6-7 years ago, so it's been on my TBR for ages, and Alice has had hers almost as long, I think, or just about the same time. So we were like, let's finally do it. Let's do it. Let's read House of Leaves. So that is the most unusual book I've ever read, hands down. But just to add a couple of picture books to it, unusual and intriguing, we have The Lost Thing by Sean Tan, which I recommended on my Picture This TBR. And the reason it's so unusual, his artwork is really surreal and strange. So if you've never read anything by Sean Tan, I'd urge you to go and check his work out. He writes picture books and stories. He illustrates stories. He doesn't say they're for children. He's got another amazing picture book called The Arrival, but his work is quite haunting, it's quite surreal and very open-ended. So The Lost Thing, if you read it, what's your interpretation of it? Figure out what that is. Another unusual picture book that I absolutely adore and use for writing stimulus with children is The Mysteries of Harris Burdick, and this is by Chris Van Allsburg. Chris Van Allsburg wrote the Polar Express and Jumanji, so that's his most famous work, but this is brilliant. So the story behind it is that Harris Burdick is someone who came into a publishing house one day, and the story's in the front of the book. He talks to the publisher, Mr. Peter Wenders, and he talks to Peter Wenders about a series of stories he's written, and he's got some illustrations to go with them. And so the publisher is interested in these. He drops off the pictures and some captions, the titles of the stories, or captions to go with the pictures, and then he never comes back. But then Mr. Peter Wenders, the imaginary publisher, publishes these. So this whole concept by Chris Van Allsburg is of a mysterious writer and illustrator who left these pictures, but the stories were never finished. And you look at the artwork by Chris Van Allsburg, and everything is it's just like this. So you've got these pictures, and then you have the title and caption, and that is all you have. And the pictures are so unusual so that they inspire such great writing. Look at this one, Under the Rug. Absolutely love this one. Another Place, Another Time. There we go. You can look at these pictures all day and just imagine the stories that went with them. There is also a Chronicles of Harris Burdick, that famous people like Stephen King is in here. They've written short stories to match the pictures. Now, I've only read one or two of the short stories. You've got amazing authors tell the tales. Stephen King, Cory Doctorow, Kate DiCamillo, some amazing authors, Chris Van Allsburg himself, Lewis Sacca. So some fantastic authors in here have tried to write the stories of Harris Burdick based on those pictures. Prompt 5 is Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. What is your favourite book featuring the natural world? And it's actually this, Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. I've talked about Bill Bryson, he's a comfort read for me, and this is actually my favourite book of his, and it is his memoir or his basically a travelogue of his walking the Appalachian Trail, and it is full of his trademark humour. He features a return of one of his old friends, Stephen Katz, who featured in a previous book of his, and their relationship together and the adventures they get up to on the Appalachian Trail, and the facts and things that he tells you all about it always blow my mind, like the different things that have occurred on the trail, how the trail was built, the length of it, the visitors. It's a really great book, and if you've never read it before, I urge you to read it. The next prompt is Goodnight Moon, illustrated by Margaret Wise Brown. Do you read at bedtime? Do you read to anyone else at bedtime? Did someone ever read to you at bedtime? So this is a lovely prompt. So my dad used to read to us when we were younger, as I've mentioned in another prompt. I'll talk about that a bit more in another prompt. may have been before this prompt or it might be after it. I've had to do some clever editing because I left one of my own prompts out. And yeah, I can't really read in bed at night anymore, but when I was younger I'd stay awake for hours reading under the covers if I could get a torch. I'd read all night, you know, one of those things where you wait, you can't put the book down. I can't do that anymore. I literally get into bed. As soon as I crack open my book, I fall asleep. So I tend to listen to my audiobook before I go to bed now. And I don't read to anybody. No, I don't have any little people living with me to read to. Prompt 6, Guess How Much I Love You by Sam McBratney. Who has been the biggest influence on you as a reader? So I'm just going to have to say it's my family. My mum and dad are readers, they're voracious readers. My mum has always got a book on the go, so is my dad. They always encouraged us to read. They're from a generation where they grew up in the 50s in Ireland, and my mum had a TV and a radio. My dad didn't. They were like not very well off. So what they always could do is borrow books from the library, and they could always read. And they read so much, that generation. And my mum and dad always had books in the house. They always made sure we had books. I don't remember learning to read. I could read when I went to school, and I think that's because my mum and dad always read to us at bedtime. So my dad always read to us at bedtime, or he would make stories up. So we always had a bedtime story, and my mum would always buy loads of books secondhand because we couldn't really afford newer books, but my mum would pick up books at jumble sales and secondhand bookstores and library sales and things like that. So yeah, they're the biggest influence on me as a reader. And after them, my 2 older brothers. So there are 4 of us. I've got 3 brothers, no sisters. My 2 older brothers are sort of 9 and 11 years older than me, so there's a big age gap. My younger brother's 2 years younger than me, and my 2 older brothers, they influenced me hugely in my reading, particularly fantasy reading. And my Chronicles of Narnia set that I own, my middle brother Liam, he had those and loved them, and they were passed down to me, and that was amazing. Also, that copy of Mort that I showed, this one, is the original copy that I stole from his bedroom when I was 13. Martin is a massive fantasy reader as well, my oldest brother, and yeah, so I just used to soak up all their influence in terms of my liking for sci-fi and fantasy and things like that. So yeah, they're the biggest influence on me. And yeah, the people I talk about most with about books, aside from you guys, is my brothers. So yeah, they're the biggest influence. Prompt 7, The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. So there are 2 questions here. You can answer both or one or the other. The first question is, which book or set of books would you give to an emerging reader? And the second question is, which book have you given as a gift more than once? In answer to the first question, I think emerging readers, and this is why I started Spread Book Joy, and this is why I read so much children's fiction, emerging readers, for me, it's about finding the book for them that suits them, because they're all individuals, their interests, their tastes will be very individual. But having said that, as a teacher, I can tell you now, hands down, that when I've taught the age of about 7, 8, when children are moving away from the reading schemes and starting to explore chapter books. And as a teacher, it's glorious because you can introduce them to chapter books and things to try and whet their appetite. And I can tell you, hands down, without a shadow of a doubt, the books that will always children will want to read are Roald Dahl's books. Roald Dahl. There was an issue in schools over here in the UK with teachers being overly reliant on Roald Dahl, and I think that's not the case anymore, but there is a reason for that, and that is that children are always thrilled and overjoyed by his writing. Adults read his books who've never read them before and they're a bit shocked because some of the things that go on in them, but children are thrilled by those books. The Twits is one that they absolutely love because it's so disgusting. George's Marvellous Medicine, all of those. I have never, in all my nearly 20 years of teaching, not read those books and had children delighted in them. So if you've got an emerging reader in your life, get a set of Roald Dahl books, but any of them really. One of my favourite books of all time, and I should have said this before, is Matilda. I love Matilda. Matilda came out and was published when I was about 9 or 10. So yeah, it holds a special place in my heart. I clearly identified with her as a huge lover of books and reading. So we've got a number of people I want to tag in this original tag. Shelly and I are going to tag some people twice because there are people that we both have in common. So I'm going to read through my list, and if you are not on this list, please do this tag if you have a YouTube channel, if you'd like to do it anyway, because it's fun. Hopefully you'll find it fun. Okay, so tagging: Alice at Alice in the Giant Bookshelf, Gemma at Gem of Books, Emily over at Novell Novels, Ange at Ange's Book Chatter, Gina Stanya, AJ over at AJ Dunn Reads and Writes, Sandy at Miss Reads a Lot, Becky at Teacup the Storyteller, Say Kevy over at Say Kevy, Amy, Booktube with Amy, Scott and Nell over at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, Elizabeth at Boucans and Books, Berner at Berner's Bookish Adventures, Rosie Cockshut, Nikki at Red Dot Reads, Gaia Athena, Pay over at Attention, MJ at Reading This Life, Ariel at Reading and Whatnot, and Marilyn Meyer Mendoza. And those are the people I am tagging for this tag. I hope you enjoyed it. It's our first original tag. I had a lot of fun creating it and a lot of fun answering it, and I look forward to seeing if anyone does it. Hopefully I'll see you all again here soon. Bye.